site of it. I'm a volunteer at Telfed. Welcome to all of you for joining us on this important topic of insurance. I'm going to hand over to our CEO, Daron Klein, to tell you a little bit about the organization behind these events, and again, introduce you to Aviva Tal-Or. During the event, if you have any technical problems, please share that with Aviva via the chat, and she will help you with anything that you need. Over to you, Daron, with your words from Telfed. Welcome.
Thank you, Teddy, and Erev Tov, everybody, and it's wonderful to be part of this evening. I want to thank all of our participants, our panelists, and I want to thank Norman for agreeing to moderate, and a big kol hakavod to Teddy and to Aviva for constantly putting together high-level events for our community, both here and in the diaspora. And we really appreciate it. Thank you to both of you. And I'm sure it's going to be a very informative evening. So just to dedicate a few minutes to the organization behind this evening that puts together these regular events, and that is Telfed. And we're just going to learn a little bit about the organization. So the Telfed is our nickname. Tel being from Tel Aviv, Fed being from Federation, the Tel Aviv Federation. We were founded in 1948 by the South African Zionist Federation, and we were here in Israel to look after the 800 Machal soldiers who came to fight in the War of Independence, who came from South Africa. And at the end of the war, the Zionist Federation said, guys, you did a great job, pack up and come back to South Africa. But a lot of those 800 wanted to stay, and there was no Misrad HaKlita in those days. So since 1948, we have been operating in Israel, helping Southern Africans and now also Australians to make their home in Israel. No longer an official part of the South African Zionist Federation. That stopped about 40 years ago, but we still carry that name with pride. If we look at our mission is to promote the quality of life of Southern Africans and Australians in Israel. We want them to experience what you can only experience in the land of Israel. That's being a Jew in a Jewish homeland. We also want them to participate and contribute to Israeli society. We believe our Olim have got a lot to offer to Israel. We want them to utilize their potential and to have a positive impact on the state of Israel. And the last slide shows what the organization does. Each one of these squares is a full-time staff member with a group of volunteers. So here we go, Klita on the far right-hand side. Klita has been the heart of Telfed since 1948. You can see last year we had over 300 Olim from South Africa, over 80 from Australia, not bad in a COVID year. We also voluntarily help in Olim from the United Kingdom. We want our Olim to contact us as soon as possible before they make Aliyah, so we can help prepare them for their Aliyah and specifically prepare them for their Klita, for their absorption. And that's Daniela Shapira, who is our Klita advisor. Special division for lone soldiers. You can see we have over 100 South African lone soldiers and about 60 Australian lone soldiers serving in the army. We help them before their induction, while they serve, and specifically when they come out of the army, they need a lot of help adapting to Israeli civilian society. We're the only organization that provides housing. Here you have 105 rental apartments, 30 in Ra'anana, the rest in Tel Aviv. We give subsidized rentals. People can stay in our absorption centers for up to 3 years. And 70% of the rental income goes here to help those that are in financial need. We help over 400 financially needy Olim every month, a full-time social worker providing counseling, food cards, and assistance for the needy. We have about 1 to 2 events a week. You can see last year we had 70 events, over 2,000 participants. It's not bad last year in a COVID year. Hopefully now we're going back to face-to-face events as well. It's a great way to bring people together, new and veteran Olim, and to learn about all different aspects of Israeli society. Tonight that's insurance, and also can be fun events as well. The Telfed magazine goes out twice a year, Pesach and Rosh Hashanah. The newsletter goes out once a month. If you're not getting the newsletter or the magazine, please let Aviva know through the chat and she'll check our database. So that's your way to keep updated on what's happening with Telfed. Very active Facebook page and Instagram. If you're not on there, please join. Over 400 scholarships that we give out every year. You can see we're the only Ole organization that presents our scholarships at the Knesset. And we have scholarships which are based on community service. We have scholarships that are based on financial need. And we even have scholarships for people that are coming to study in Israel that haven't yet made Aliyah. And they study here, and during their 3 years of study, that's their pre-Aliyah experience. We've proven through those scholarships that after people study here for 3 years, they then make Aliyah. 250 volunteers, of which, for example, Teddy Seitovitz is one of them, chairman of our Aliyah Projects Committee. And our volunteers are spread all over the country. They help us absorb the Olim through regional committees. They provide pre-Aliyah and post-Aliyah advice in those regional committees. And you see here in the photograph, we also teach English to Ethiopian Olim. And the last square here relates to employment, a full-time employment advisor. She's also a life coach. We give counseling and preparation for the employment market, both pre and post Aliyah, and mentors. So if anyone tonight would like to be a mentor, if you are successful in your field and you'd like to help other Olim find jobs in your field, please let Aviva know and she'll put you in touch with our employment advisor. So you can see a very active organization. 40% of our budget, 40% of our budget is from fundraising. So I'd like to encourage you that if you'd like to give a donation to a good organization that helps Olim settle in Israel and do well, please go to a Telfed website and donate via the website. It's very easy to do so. Wish everybody a wonderful and informative evening. Thank you again to our panelists and to Norman. And I want to thank you all for joining us. And I'm sure that you're going to be a lot more knowledgeable after this evening about the world of insurance in Israel. Toda rabah.
Thank you, Doron. So again, a warm welcome to everybody. Again, during the event, you will all be muted. If you have any questions, please send them via the chat to Aviva and she will help you. If you have any questions concerning the topic of insurance, please send them to me or to Norman. So without further ado, a warm welcome to everybody and a big thank you to all the panelists and to Norman for taking part in this event. I wanted to mention that it takes a long time to prepare for such an event, especially to do a presentation, and it doesn't go without saying, so thank you to everybody. So our moderator for this evening, Norman Jerry. Norman Jerry made Aliyah in 1961 and joined Machel as and completed his training as a paratrooper. After working for Africa Israel for 4 years, he became an independent insurance agent. It is worth noting that his business was built upon a foundation of new English-speaking immigrants. Norman is married to Thelma, who he met in the army. They have 3 children and so far 8 grandchildren. Norman said he is extremely lucky that they all live in Israel. He is retired and lives in Herzliya. Again, thank you so much, Norman.
Thank you.
Danny Newman. Danny will be speaking on household insurance. Danny made Aliyah from England in 1999, where he was a financial consultant. Danny joined the Goldfuss insurance team in 2006. He opened the Modi'in branch, following in 2012 the Beit Shemesh branch, where he is the manager. Danny assists clients in all aspects of insurance, from home to private, health, life insurance, pensions, planning. He is also the insurance professional and admin for the Living Financially Smarter in Israel Facebook group, which she provides financial resources for Anglos in Israel. Mark Joffe. Mark Joffe is an insurance veteran in Israel with 30 years of experience, specializing in all types of insurance in the private market, such as life, private health, and disability products, as well as life and pension portfolio analysis. Mark also deals with short-term insurance, such as motor, home, structure, and contents insurance. Mark this evening will be speaking about life and health. David Pincus. David, who has been living in Israel for over 40 years, entered the field of life insurance over 20 years ago, with Phoenix and eventually being promoted to managing the department at Phoenix as well as at Menorah, with responsibility for hundreds of agents. He then became a director at Sinai and also a broker. While in the last 3 years, David services as senior partner at the Pope Jerry Insurance, dealing in all forms of insurance: household, automobile, travel, health, and pension. David is married and a father of 3 and lives in Kfar Saba. David will be speaking about car insurance this evening. Adam Maimon, sorry, the last one. Adam Maimon has a BA in economics, an LLB, and a master's in law, and is a certified insurance broker specializing in insurance placements and insurance law. Adam has 7 years experience working for well-known companies in the Israeli insurance industry. Currently, he's founding an insurance venture providing risk management and financial services. This evening, Adam will be speaking about long-term insurance, pensions, and also explaining a little about the Israeli insurance system. So thank you, everybody. I hand over to Norm and Jerry. Just one more thing, I'll give you a short structure on how it will go this evening. Norman will be our moderator. And then in the beginning, each participant will have 8 minutes to present their topics. After they finish presenting their topics, each panelist will be able to ask the other company one power question, and each will have 2 minutes to answer. After that, Norman will be asking them each the same question, and they will have 2 or 3 minutes to answer. And after that, we will have audience Q&A. So we look forward to it all. Over to you, Norman.
Good evening, everybody. I would like, first of all, to thank Doron and the Telfed organization for organizing this affair. I think it's a wonderful gesture on their part to try and educate as much as possible in a very difficult field. It's quite clear from the introductions that the 4 panelists know a great deal about insurance, and I hope that everybody tonight will learn something of the fundamentals and be able to help them in their aliyah to Israel. Without much ado, I want to ask Danny to start his talk on household insurance. I just want to mention one thing that so that you all understand what is happening. There is what is known as short-term insurance and long-term insurance. Short-term insurance is basically motor cars and household, and long-term insurance is the life field. So that gives you an idea of what's going to happen tonight. Danny will start with the short-term discussion on household insurance. Please, Danny.
Thank you, Norman. Okay, I'm going to dive straight in. Good evening, everyone. 8 minutes isn't a huge amount of time, so we're going to speak about home insurance in Israel. The concept of insurance in Israel is the same that you may be familiar with elsewhere, whereby you're looking to protect yourself against an insurable loss. I'm going to race through a few things. With home insurance in Israel, there are 3 main components. So I'm just going to move to the side there. The 3 main components are structure insurance, in Hebrew known as mivneh. That in essence covers everything that's physically attached to the structure. So it's the walls, the roof, built-in kitchen, built-in bathrooms, and various other attachments. You have contents, known in Hebrew as tchula, which is anything that is tangible and movable, things like furniture, clothing, books, jewelry, electrical appliances. And then you have third-party liability, covering all the liabilities. Now, let's say someone slips inside the house and they can hold you responsible, or you've got a burst pipe, or you've left the faucet or tap running in the bath and it's overflowed and caused damage to the neighbours beneath you. That's covered under the liability sections. The risks are the same as most countries, covering from burglary, fire damage, water damage, earthquake, vandalism, and other liabilities. And as we mentioned, the contents which we'll start off with is looking at your personal belongings. In Israel, one insures what's known as new for old replacement value. So if someone's got a 20-year-old refrigerator, you're not going to be insuring it for 50 shekels because you're not going to be able to necessarily replace it. So it's based on a new for old policy. So one usually recommends, I'm sure my colleagues here would agree, who also work in this field, is that we recommend having an appraiser come and make sure that you're correctly insured. So the question is, why should we have an appraiser? There are three main reasons why an appraisal is recommended. Firstly, in the hypothetical scenario of a claim, if you have a list of what you have, the onus is no longer on you to prove what you had, and it makes the claims process far swifter. Second reason is if you want to cover items outside the home, jewelry, electrical appliances like laptop computers and the like, having an appraisal or a receipt or valuation, you can cover it outside. The main reason though is to make sure you're not over or under insured. In Israel, you can't choose to just, if you've got a table and let's say 10 chairs, you can't say, I just want to insure 4 chairs because that's all we need. That's going into under or over insurance. So a quick example. If someone really has 200,000 shekel worth of contents and they decide to insure much more, they want to insure 400,000 shekel, in the event of a claim, if let's say a fire guts the entire place, they're not going to get more than they have. So in this instance, they're needlessly paying too much money and over-insuring themselves. The flip side is if they choose to under-insure. In this instance, the insurance company will look, in this example of they've only insured 100,000 shekel, it becomes very obvious if a loss adjuster comes into a home where they've said they're only insuring 100,000 shekel and they actually have more, they'll start checking to see what they have. And in this example, the insurance company will say, you've chosen to insure 50% of the risk. So for example, in this example, if just one table was destroyed in a fire and it's worth 15,000 shekel, even though it's within the 100,000 shekel that one's insured, the insurance company says you've insured 50% of the risk, so the maximum payout will be 7,500 shekel, less the deductible, less the excess that one has. There are other things you can cover outside the home on an all-risk basis, depending on the company that one's with. The list is here. I won't dwell too much on that due to time constraints. A thing that people often want to cover is jewelry. This can increase the premium depending on what the regular contents to jewelry ratio is. So one can consider whether or not they want to cover everything. Here you won't go into under or over insurance. You can go for lower agreed values. You can decide to take off an inherited piece that you may never replace. Again, it's all on a personal basis. You can tailor make it. Depending on the level of contents one has, or if one's on a ground floor apartment or in a standalone home, different insurances, depending on what you have, may require certain security requirements. Bars on windows, an alarm system, safe. This isn't across the board, but again, it depends on the level that one has. With structure, and this is a typical Olez house, obviously, that one has here in Israel. Again, there are two main ways of insuring. There is a third where the whole vad bite comes together and insures thing, but a lot of people will go for the default option, which is what's known as rebuild value. where one in essence looks at the size of property in square meters, how much it costs per square meter, and that will be the sum insured. So if someone's living in a 100 square meter property and they think the rebuild value is 7,000 shekel a square meter, so the sum insured will be 700,000 shekel. If one's in an apartment block, you can go for market value. So if you're on the 5th floor of a high-rise apartment block, you may say, well, if the building collapses, if there's a gas pipe explosion, and the neighbors beneath me aren't insured, they're not going to rebuild the 5th floor before everyone else settles. So you can insure the land value as well, adding that on, that in the event where you can't rebuild in a timely fashion, then you can get the land value to enable you to not have to wait and purchase another property. If one's got a mortgage, then the bank will require you to have a lien on the policy. The final thing that I want to touch on, and this is something where a lot of olim, when they come, they usually start off renting. I'm going to go through 2 examples. Landlord is insured with insurance company A and tenant with insurance company B. One example is that there's a problem with the electricity and the plug sockets or the light fittings, there's sparks coming out. Now, if there's a fire, the landlord, all his structure will be covered by insurance company A. The tenant, all their belongings will be covered by insurance company B. Scenario number 2 is, let's say the tenant has lit Hanukkah candles or Friday night candles and has gone to a neighbor or a friend, and they left the candles on the edge of the table by an open window, and they come back greeted by the fire department. Again, both insurance companies will pay out. However, in the scenario whereby the landlord is deemed to be negligent because of faulty electricity, once insurance company B is paid out to the tenant, the insurance company B can turn around and sue personally the landlord for whatever damages they've paid out. Conversely, the other way around, if the tenant was liable and deemed to be negligent, once insurance company A has paid out to the landlord, insurance company A can turn around and sue personally the tenant for whatever they've had to pay out to the landlord. There's something which a lot of people don't realize, and in my mind, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't cost anything extra to add into rental contracts and into each other's insurance policies, and that's the subrogation clause. What one does, one in essence cancels the subrogation clause in favor of the other party. Both landlord and tenant would add this in. Again, it's just wording in the policy, and what it means, and here's the wording in case you want it, it means that both insurance companies will still pay out, but they forgo the option to be able to sue the other side. Again, it costs nothing, it's just wording, and it mutually protects both the landlord and tenant. The recommendation is that it's added to the rental contract so they both can protect each other. As mentioned, third party covers other risks, which I won't go into, and you can tailor-make the policy to add extra wording. You have bicycles and you want to cover bicycle cover in case you injure someone, or you have certain business activity there, or you have a swimming pool in the garden, then you can add in certain things as well. Norman, you had your hand up.
I had my hand up because you're very short of time. I'll give you another half a minute.
I'm on the last slide. So
okay.
Basically, these are just tips which I'm going to leave here because it's being recorded. But ultimately, if one's bringing a shipment, it's a very good list to use to try to estimate how much you have to have the policy in place before the appraiser comes, and then we can modify things. Review your rental contract beforehand, and it's recommended to speak to an insurance professional to understand all the options so that you can tailor-make the policy that meets your personal requirements. That's it. I hope I made the 8 minutes.
I think you did admirably well in your 8 minutes. You gave a very comprehensive talk on the implications of what insurance is, and thank you very much for that. I would now like to call on Mark to give us a talk on health insurance and a few words about life insurance. Mark? Mark, you're not, I can't
Can you hear me?
you.
Okay.
Now I can.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Thank you for the honor to speaking to all of you, and it's a great honor to be with all you new Olim Chadashim. And I'm going to be speaking today a little bit on the public and private health insurance sectors and a little bit of life insurance here in Israel. I've been here for 43 years, so I know the local systems pretty well. All Israeli citizens, new immigrants like yourself, are extremely privileged because from the day you step off the plane from South Africa or Australia or wherever you're coming from, you're entitled to medical services of the highest level from the minute that you arrive in Israel. This includes all the members of your family, which could be your parents, your children, and yourselves. And the most important thing is that it's got no connection to your actual state of health. That means that the government health system has to accept you with everything that you have, all the problems that you've brought with you from wherever you've come. That means if you arrive in Israel and you already have high blood pressure, diabetes, or stage 3 cancer, you're going to join a medical aid, and you're going to be accepted from day one and receive treatment from the day that you need it. The government medical aids will be a lifelong medical aid, and it doesn't matter whether you're working, you're unemployed, or you are retired. All payments in Israel to your medical aid are going to be made through Bituach Leumi. Now, Bituach Leumi will be one of the first words that you come across when you start dealing with the medical aid system here in Israel. Bituach Leumi is actually the National Institute of Insurance, and their job in helping you connect up with your medical aid that you're going to be joining in Israel is that they pass on the money to the medical aid that you have decided to join. Bituach Leumi also has another important role. They will be in charge one day to pay you your government retirement pension. And God forbid, if you ever get disabled before you go on retirement, they also pay out disability pensions. As I said, all the payments for your medical aid are going to be paid to the medical aid by Bituach Leumi. And if you already have a job, your employer is going to be taking a certain part of your salary every month, and he's going to be paying it to Bituach Leumi for you. Now, what you'll discover is if you're coming from a place like South Africa or Australia, the medical aids here are of an amazing standard, both from the point of view of what it's actually going to be costing you as a family or as an individual, and what you're going to be getting for it, as opposed to a South African discovery or alternative medical plan. You're never going to actually run out of quotas. You won't, if you're taking a certain type of medication, you won't hit September, October, and discover that you're already putting your hand into your pocket and you're paying the whole amount out of pocket. So you'll discover that you're actually walking into an amazing health system, government health system, which is basically has identical conditions. It doesn't matter whether you belong to Maccabi, Clalit, Muchedet, or Leumit. Those are the four major government medical aids, of which every citizen has the right to choose which one he wants to belong to. Once you've actually chosen your medical aid, you can actually, a good question to ask would be, what do I actually get from the medical aid? What do I need above the normal standard of medical aid or medical services that I'm going to be given, I'm entitled to from the state, from the fact that I'm an Oleh Chadash and that I've made Aliyah? Well, your first level of medical aid is going to cover you for your family medicine, your family doctor, your consultant care, your specialists, any specialist you need to see, a gynecologist, an orthopedic surgeon, any type of medical specialist, your medications. Your medications are going to be covered at a very nominal fee, and also medical home care and acute hospitalization fees will be covered as well. What's not covered by the basic level of medical aid? Long-term nursing care. God forbid someone in the family gets Alzheimer's or dementia, or they have a stroke and they need care and money to bring in a helper to help them carry out the day-to-day functions. That's not going to be covered by your first basic level of nursing care. That won't be covered through the first level of Kupat Chulim. Now, how do the insurance companies differ and compete with each other? What they actually do is the first level, what you can see here in blue, is the public health system, which is your Maccabi, Clalit, and Leumit or Mu'chedet. And the second level is what we call Shaban, or it's the Shirutim Refuim Nosafim, or additional medical services. This is how the Kupot actually compete with themselves. And just to give you an example of how this second level works, could be what services will they give a woman who's pregnant through her pregnancy and the childbirth. So Clalit, for example, might come and say, we'll give you 14,000 shekels, but you can only do 5 different types of genetic tests and tests during your pregnancy, and so much for the childbirth. Maccabi, on the other hand, this is just an example, might come and say, we give you a basket of 14,000 shekels. You can do any pregnancy test you want, just give us the receipts afterwards. So this is the way that they compete between themselves. Now, the medical aids, basically, this is how they're making a lot of their money, and this is how they're marketing themselves. What you can see is that each one has a name that they market themselves. For example, Maccabi will call their second layer either Maccabi Zahav or Maccabi Sheli, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Clalit will either have Mushlam Zahav or Platinum. Mu'chedet will be Mu'chedet Adif or Mu'chedet Plus, and Leumit has one level called Leumit Adif.
Mark, another 1.5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Norman. From a recent survey done, 80% of the people that were interviewed were very happy with the services they were getting from their medical aids. But of those 80% that were interviewed, 70% were carrying private insurances. Now, the question is, if the medical aids in this country are so good, why would 70% also be carrying private insurances? And the reason behind that is that there are loopholes in the system. As good as the system is, there are loopholes and holes in the system. For example, if you needed a CT or an MRI, you might be in a situation where Maccabi or Clalit says that that particular CT or MRI has a waiting period of 4 months or 5 months. You might also be in a situation where you need a specific drug, which is in the basket. The government determines once a year which expensive drugs are going to be in the basket and which will not be in the basket. So you never want to be in a situation where the particular drug that you need that might cost thousands of shekels is not in the basket, or it is in the basket for a designated illness and you have something else that the doctor has prescribed that specific drug for. What I usually recommend for all Olim Chadashim coming into Israel is that they take out the basic level of catastrophic insurance cover, which will cover them for catastrophic occurrences where you financially cannot handle anything that big. It might be a transplant, it might be an operation abroad, or it might be medication that's not covered by your normal kuppah. This is a very cheap level of insurance, and I would recommend that for everybody. After that, once you have that, sit down and decide. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Okay. Once you have the catastrophic cover, sit down with an agent and discover and discuss if the things that are nice to have and good to have are affordable, and I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you, Norman.
Okay, thank you very much. I sympathize with you because you had to cover a tremendous amount of ground in a very short time, and you did admirably well. Well done. I would now like to ask to call on Adam to give us a talk about pensions and finance.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Norman. Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you. Too bad you're not showing your videos. That, like, you know, be a part of the show. I'll share my screen. 1 second. Let's go. So we're gonna talk about a little bit the insurance system in Israel and pension and financials. That basically means we're going to talk about money. So let's start about the insurance market, how it works, like in a regulator perspective. On top of the pyramid, we have the Commissioner of Insurance. Okay, he's subrogated to the Ministry of Finance. He supervises everything, all the insurance placement, whoever sells insurance, insurance regulations, everything. Beneath, we have the insurance companies and we have the investment houses. Investment houses, they invest. There we get our pensions. We can also get it from the insurance companies. And on the last layer, we have the insurance agents. Now, it's very important to understand that in Israel, it's not that you have an insurance agent, an insurance broker. I really don't know how it's in South Africa or Australia, but if it's like in the States, that there you have an insurance broker that approaches a few companies, and you have the insurance agent that works only for one company. So in Israel, there's no difference. The insurance agent is the insurance broker. He approaches all companies. He shouldn't be working from on behalf of one companies. But there are some insurance agencies in Israel that are held by insurance companies in Israel, which make them a bit biased, may make them a bit biased. So you should pay attention to that. If there's any problem, any complaint that you want to make against an insurance company, an insurance agent, I don't know, you didn't get your claim paid, you didn't get a good service, or whatever, you can submit a complaint online on the Commissioner of Insurance website. And that's about that. Also, insurance, there's a lot of people here in Israel that are handling insurance with no license. So also when you want to sit with someone and talk about insurance, that he represents himself as insurance agent, make sure he has a license. This is also something you can check online very, very easily. Any questions about that? Something you want to ask me? No, good. So let's talk about a little bit about pension, long-term savings, money, and financials. In Israel, we have a pension plan. We're going to talk about what affects our pension, about the mandatory pension legislation in Israel, compensation rights and termination of employee-employee relations, and what does our pension consist of. Also, there are few financial instruments that are kind of long-term savings, but can be invested directly in the capital markets, and you can get nice earnings on this kind of money, and we'll talk about it also. And of course, also we have the portfolio management, that is something that is well known worldwide. So let's dive a little bit deep. So what affects our pension plan? Eventually, when we get our salary, the employee needs to deposit some of our money. We need to deposit to the pension plan, and also the employee needs to deposit some of our salary to the pension fund. So what affects our pension plan is the annual yield. Okay, there are difference between the various pension companies. In the yield, this information can be found online. What this company did this in the last 5 years, what that company did in the last 5 years, and can help you decide which pension fund you want to go with. There's the management fee that is paid also from the deposit and also from what we accumulated. And of course, the demographic yield, it affects the fund's population and claims. Does anyone know what happened on 2008? I'll give you about 5 seconds to answer that. 3, 2, 1. No, okay. If no one knows who this is Eli Yishai. He was the Minister of Industry and Commerce in Israel. In 2008, he legislated the mandatory pension legislation, okay? By this legislation, he decided how much the employee should deposit from the salary, how much the employer should deposit from the employee salary to pension, and also there's there's an additional amount of money the employer needs to deposit in case of termination of employment compensation. We're going to talk about that really soon. As you can see, the amounts increased from 2008. Today we are on the mandatory amounts that are on 2017. And very important to understand that when a lot of you are probably Olim Chadashim, or even if not, if you now start a job, your employer doesn't need to deposit pension yet. He can wait 6 months until he starts your pension. But it's very important to review your employer contract to see that he deposits in the right way, where he deposits the money, and you have the right to decide where you want your pension to be managed, in what fund.
Yeah. Danny, I'm afraid you've only got another minute.
Danny? Who's Danny?
Adam, I mean you.
Adam, sorry, he means
Adam, okay. Okay, thank you, no problem. So I'll go over this very fast. Our pension, it has disability coverage in case we are inability to work. It's survivor coverage. If we die, it's kind of a life insurance. And of course, the retirement pension when we retire. Let's talk about a little bit, 40 seconds about the long-term savings. We have some stuff you can invest in, save money from your salary. We have a study fund that is something that our employer can open for us. It's closed for 6 years, but when we withdraw and the money is liquid, it's free of tax. We have investment provident fund. This is also can be an investment instrument invested in the capital markets. You can deposit up to 75,000 shekel per year. It's free of tax when switching investment tracks, and tax is only paid at withdrawal. We have a saving policy, very familiar like the investment provident fund. However, it doesn't have any roof of how much you need to deposit. And the portfolio management, as we have no direct buy and sell of financial instruments, and taxes paid on every transaction. Just so you know that there's a few websites online you can find information about also your pension and also the insurance you have in Israel. You have a Masleka Pensionit that has all your pension monies online. You can find it. And also you have Hara Bituach. It's a website you can search for all the insurances you ever purchase in Israel. Just here's a little look how these websites looks like. This is the Masleka Pensionit. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Adam. Very informative. And I'd now like to ask David Pincus to talk about motor car insurance. David?
You hear me well?
I can hear you, and now I can see
you, David.
Okay, how you doing? I'm going to talk about car insurance. Car insurance is one of those things.
Just a second, David. Adam, are you going to disconnect your screen?
Okay. Hi.
Thank you for that. Now you can go ahead. Sorry about that, David. Do you want to start from the beginning?
Sure. I'm going to be talking about cars and really short moment, just about travel insurance. Regarding cars is something that most of you are going to have, either a brand new car or a secondhand car. And insurance-wise, it doesn't really matter that much in Israel. There are 3 different types of insurance policies in Israel. One of them is the compulsory, what they call the bituach chova. A compulsory certificate is one of those things that the dealer will not let you leave the showroom if you don't have a bituach chova. And officially, by law, you're not allowed to drive a car if you don't have a compulsory certificate. Compulsory insurance is actually when they issue a policy that provides you with cover for any physical bodily injury to you or to somebody else, and it doesn't matter if you're at fault or not at fault. That means if you're involved in an accident and it wasn't your fault or it is your fault, you hit a pedestrian walking across the road or you hit a different car, that will be covered under what they call the bituach chova. You probably hear it a lot, chova or compulsory, it's the same thing. It's a basic policy It starts out cheap. The older the car gets, the more expensive that it gets. And people always say, why? And they always explain that the older the car gets, the less safety precaution it has on the car. And therefore, if you're involved in an accident, the chances are that you'll be hurt higher in an older car than in a newer car. The second type of policy that you could buy in Israel is what they call a comprehensive policy. Comprehensive policy will cover you for any damages that you have on your car, and it will cover third party, meaning if you hit a different car or somebody's wall or house or anything like that, you will be covered under that policy also. Most policies have some deductible, usually in the vicinity of about 1,000 shekels per policy. You can ask to put a waiver on that deductible if you want to, deductible or excess, depending where you come from. You don't have to. Some people do, some people don't. And again, a comprehensive policy is something that we always recommend with newer cars. When the car gets older, when the value of a car is very low, we tend to come along and say to people, listen, you can take out a third type of policy called a third party policy. A third party policy will cover any damage that you cause to somebody else. That means if you're involved in a car accident and you hit somebody else, it only covers the damage to that third party, and of course, not to yourself. So again, 3 policies. One is compulsory, which you have to take out. The second is a comprehensive policy, which we recommend. And optional is a third party policy that's like a lower level of comprehensive policy. Something very important for all of you. You're coming from abroad. The insurance companies in Israel have no idea what your driving record is. It is extremely important for you guys to bring your no claims document from wherever you're coming in the world. It could be in any language. English is always easier, but it's very, very important to bring it. It will save you a lot of money when you take out an insurance policy in Israel. And the insurance companies are looking for 3 years of no claims. Now, if you had 2 cars and one car you had 1 or 2 claims, and you had another car that you have no claims on, bring us that document, because that's a document that will be acceptable by insurance companies in Israel. Officially, the insurance companies in Israel want to know if you've had claims on a specific car. They're not asking if you as a driver didn't have any accidents in the last 7, 8, 10, 15 years. They want to know if the car that you owned had any accidents, and they will ask for that report based on the car. You have to realize that there's a big difference between policies. Some policies, we ask people who drives the car, how old the drivers are, if they drive on Shabbat, if they don't drive, if they drive a lot, okay? People who don't drive many kilometers will have better premium for people who drive, 30, 40,000 kilometers per year. Males, females, young, old, all these things have an effect on the premium and what you're paying. Now, there are a lot of insurance companies out there. There are quite a few direct companies, but what I tell all our clients, and I'll say to you guys also, is when something happens, you want to have somebody to speak to, somebody who speaks your language, who knows how to explain what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. And if you do choose to go with direct companies, you have to realize you're never going to be dealing with the same person when you buy the policy, when they sell the policy, when you have a claim on the policy, and so on. It's very important to have somebody you could deal with on a daily basis or on a monthly, annual basis. So that is regarding car insurance. The other topic I'm going to talk about very shortly has to do with travel insurance. A lot of you had medical insurance abroad. Medical insurance abroad many times provided cover if you traveled abroad. Let's say if you came from South Africa and you were going to Israel for 3 weeks, you could have been covered under your South African policy or medical supplier. In Israel, when you travel abroad, you have to have a separate policy. In order to be entitled to medical treatment abroad, you have to have a separate policy. They're very cheap. It's done by date. And of course, you can do it anywhere you want in the world. To issue a policy takes 3 minutes. And I highly, highly recommend. Nobody wants to find themselves on the other side of the world without insurance. So something very important to take care of. Yes, Norman, I see you.
We've come to the end, I think, David.
I think I think he still has 2 minutes on the clock, guys. He still has a minute or two on the clock.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Travel insurance was just important for me to point out, but otherwise, everything's okay.
Okay. So thank you, David.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to thank everybody for their very comprehensive talks. We had got a wealth of information from all of you. And the real question is, how much did our participants really understand? We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to ask one question to all the panelists, and that is, what advice would you give to a new immigrant with regard to insurance? Danny, would you off with your answer, please?
Okay, so very briefly, don't be afraid to ask questions. Get as much information as possible, ask questions. Make sure you understand everything and ask questions. As David said, get letters from your insurers overseas. If you're thinking of keeping any life insurance policies from overseas, get in writing that they still cover you, that you're no longer domiciled, that you're no longer living in your country of origin. It is futile paying premiums for something that won't cover you for a technicality because you no longer live in that same country. Ask questions, join Facebook groups. There are many out there. Ask friends and ask questions.
Right. Mark, what do you have to add to that?
Same thing. Ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. With regards to life insurance policies, never cancel an existing policy in South Africa or wherever it is until you have confirmation that your cover in Israel is up and running. What you will find that there are different options available, and in a lot of cases you might find that it's considerably cheaper even in Israel than it is to South Africa. But don't be too quick in cancelling an existing policy before you've actually got the policy documents in your hands showing that your Israeli cover is up and running. Another recommendation that I've found with regards to car insurance policies, when you're bringing letters from abroad, sometimes the insurance companies will want the letter to be from the insurance company and not from the broker. So if you do have the opportunity to ask your broker to get your letter on the letterhead of the insurance company, it might give you a broader option of insurance companies to check with here in Israel. Some of the companies will, some of the companies won't. So that's my advice. Thanks, Norman.
Thanks, Mark. Adam, what would you like to add to that?
I think that the first thing I would do, maybe I'm biased, but it will be to find really an insurance agent broker to talk with and explain to you and give you a walkthrough to everything for every that can structure all the insurance and give you and go to detail with you and tell you what you need to do.
Great. Okay. David?
I'm just going to continue with what Adam had to say. I'm also going to say, ask your friends, ask other Olim who came here. Recommendations, of course, for agents and so on. Not that many English-speaking agents out there who know what you need and what to look for. And that's why I say, choose a broker, trust them, and that's it.
Okay. That covers the first stage of our evening. And I'd like to summarize it basically by saying the following. I think the most important things for a new immigrant are two of the things mentioned by our panelists. Number one is to ask questions as often as possible, wherever possible, about everything. And the second thing is you have to ask questions of somebody. In other words, you do need an agent. I strongly recommend you find an agent who you can speak to, who understands your language. And as a first stage, I would strongly suggest that you do not even consider doing direct insurance or anything like that. I think that is just looking for trouble. You're not going to save money. You'll be losing out somewhere along the line. Having said that, I'd now like the panelists to ask questions of each other. And again, Danny, would you like to start off?
You want me to ask one to each person, or how?
And you're able just to ask one question to one panelist. Not everybody's going to answer.
Okay.
You can choose the panelist and ask the question.
Okay, so I can throw this out. I guess I'll ask Mark. I can ask the question purely because we didn't have much time to speak about life insurance. So to what age in Israel would you recommend people have life insurance till?
Wow.
Mark, you got to unmute yourself.
Mark, you're muted.
Okay. To what age? Well, that's very individual. I mean, a lot of people might need the significant amount of insurance when their kids are young and growing up. It becomes far less significant when their children are out of the house, married, self-supporting, and they might have certain assets that they would be able to fall back on if, God forbid, one of the couple died. So it all depends on the individual situation of the family. However, the maximum age that you can take out life insurance policies in Israel is up to 75 and 80 if it's a mortgage. So those are the things to keep in mind. Also, you need to keep in mind that a lot of the different policies are going to become more expensive as you get older. And there are also options today to take out certain policies that the premiums will become a constant premium after a certain age. So there are a lot of good questions to ask when you're looking at taking out life insurance. It's not what they call a mutzal madaf. It's not a product that sits on the shelf with one or two options. There are different options available, and you need to ask the questions. Also, a lot of difference in price between smokers, non-smokers, so it's important to ask the right questions.
Thank you, Mark.
David, I'd like you to ask somebody a question, please.
Sure, Danny, I'm going to ask you regarding household insurance policies, maybe to just give an explanation about a company-appointed plumber to the freedom of choice with a private plumber.
Very good question. Didn't have time in 8 minutes to cover that, so thank you. There are in essence two main options for plumbers. The default option, which many people have, is to go through a plumber that works with the insurance company. Most insurance companies will offer another option to have the choice of a plumber of your choice. Sometimes you can have some very good plumbers who work with insurance companies. I actually had a burst pipe in my house a short while ago, and a private plumber I've used for many things said it was going to be very expensive to dig up the garden, and I ended up going back to the insurance company and using their plumber, told him not to do the work, and they were actually very, very good. However, you don't always know who you're getting with the insurance companies. If you have a private plumber, or if you have an expensive property, or if you have a swimming pool, without shadow of a doubt, go for a private plumber in those situations. But if you are going for the cheaper option of a private plumber, of a plumber who works with the insurance company, as has been mentioned, with an insurance agent batting for you, it could be that they are not necessarily doing the job properly. So don't let it fester. Speak straight away with your agent and have them get involved to act for you. But yes, a private plumber in many instances may be better, but in many instances may cost you a lot more money as well, and sometimes with a higher deductible to pay as well.
Thank you, Danny.
That was a very full reply. Well done. Adam, I'd like you to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Norman. David, I want to ask you about car insurance and young drivers. What age is considered a young driver? How does that affect premium, and what temporary solutions there are if we want to just take our parents' car for a ride?
Okay, happily. First of all, any young driver, any new driver who gets a license officially is called a young driver in Israel. Very expensive, the premiums that you pay for them. And therefore, the insurance companies offer a few solutions. You could do temporary coverage, which most companies you could do Literally by just tapping in your 2 Zahut number, your cell phone number, you determine the days that you want, and you get coverage for those 2 or 3 days, 4 days, as many as you want. And anybody could drive the car who has a valid driving license. Some companies provide coverage by having a mileage program. That means you pay as you drive. Some of the insurance companies, the young driver will get in the car, turn on an app, drive away, drive 10 kilometers, pay 10, 15 shekels for the drive. And different companies have different solutions. It's tailor-made. I mean, it's really, really tailor-made depending on who the driver is and how much they drive. If they come home from the weekend from the army just for, 2 to few hours every week, or if it's somebody who's home every day and drives, hundreds of kilometers a week or a month. It's very different between family and family, and that's our job to determine with the client what they actually need.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mark, I presume you have a question ready for somebody.
I do. I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. My question is to David. I'd like him to explain to our listeners on travel policies. Can you assume automatically that your travel policy is going to cover you for any event connected to COVID? Or is there something additional that you have to take out to make sure that any event of any COVID related situation will cover you?
Okay, thanks. I actually separate this into 2 separate issues. One of them I talk about the health issue. And there I say any policy that you take out with any insurance company will cover you for the health issue. It means if a client is going abroad, gets sick with COVID, needs to get medical treatment, the standard travel insurance policy on the health side will cover them. There's additional cover that one could decide to take out. It has to do with cancellation of tickets, additional hospitalization, not the hospitalization fees, but the fact that he had to change his tickets, or somebody who's with has to be in a hospital or in a hotel for a few extra days, things like that. The medical side will be covered under your travel insurance policy. The additional costs that have to do with COVID. For example, if you're supposed to fly to, I don't know, whatever country, and then the regulations change things, and then you have to be in isolation now for 2 weeks because you came back from that country. There are various things that can be added on. Again, the situation of COVID is getting better, and therefore I usually recommend for people to take out the full medical cover. I am less into taking out additional cover for like temporary cancellation or additional days that you're there or additional flight costs or things like that. Okay, that's it.
Thanks.
Okay. Right. I think, Teddy, we can now open the...
We have a couple of questions. If you also have some questions you'd like to ask the panelists, or we could open the floor to the viewers and they can ask the questions directly. In the meantime, I have one for Danny. It says, can you tell us the name of the subjugation clause in Hebrew?
Yes, I'll share my screen again. That way you can see the wording. Bear with me 1 second. It's called Bitul if Shibuv. I'll just go up 1 second. That way you can. Here it is. Cancellation of the subrogation clause in Hebrew. Bitul if Hashibuv or Tichluf. Two words in Hebrew. That's the name of the clause. So I'll leave it there for a few seconds. That way people who want to write it down can write it down. Okay,
I'll then ask the next question. Also to you, Danny. It says, I insure my laptop with my household contents. Is it covered outside the house as well?
So that depends if they've added it. Firstly, to cover something on an all-risk basis. All-risk in Hebrew known kol hasikunim, there are 2 options. You have within Israel, it can be covered anywhere unless it's stolen from a car, or if someone's traveling a lot and they want to cover it outside, then you can extend it further for worldwide cover. Obviously, the greater the level of cover, the more expensive it is to insure those items. To do so, you either need to have a receipt when you purchase it and for it to be listed and added to the policy, or that it should be on the appraisal report when your overall contents was appraised. Now, if you've over time made changes, you can have a new appraisal with most companies every 3, 4 or 5 years. But even in the interim, it's very fluid. You can take things off. You no longer have that computer. You've got rid of it. You can say to your agent, I would like to remove the Dell computer. I've just bought this HP computer. Send in the receipt to your agent, and they will be able to extend the coverage outside the home.
Thank you, Danny. One for David. Does travel insurance purchased here cover car rental abroad?
Okay, it doesn't cover car rental. You could cover the waiver that you have when you rent a car. Meaning, when you rent a car abroad, you usually have a $2,000 deductible or excess in the event of an accident. So you can take out additional cover in Israel that will cover you for the first $2,000 for any incident that you have while renting a car abroad.
Okay. So then there's a question if everybody will share their contact details at the end of the event. All the panelists will put up their contact details, their websites, and their contact emails. The next question, is there a central medical fund that benefits if children require therapy, physio, occupational therapy, specialized therapy? I'm not quite sure of the question, but I think all the funds provide that service.
Yes, they do.
Who did you ask the question?
I didn't, just a general question that somebody sent. I don't know who they're asking specifically. So I think all the medical funds cover all the specialized. There's no one central fund that does.
Yeah, but
So,
there would be a ceiling to it.
I can imagine so. Depends on the circumstance of the needs. So those are all the questions I have. I know that Norman also has some questions that he received from some of the viewers. Norman, if you'd like to ask the questions and present them to the panelists.
Okay, my first question is, and nobody related to the question of linkage in any of the policies. I'd like an answer of the linkage in a household policy. That will be Danny, and I'd like an answer to the question of linkage in a life insurance policy.
Okay, so there might when we started, so there were some people who've made Aliyah like Norman 1960s, some from 1970s. There'll be people here who would be familiar with what happened in the early 80s with hyperinflation in Israel. Since the early 80s, in the 1981 Insurance Act, all policies in Israel by law have to be linked to the consumer's price index, known in Hebrew as the madad. It's an index which has some kind of correlation with what's going on in inflation here in Israel. So all home insurance policies, and I won't go on the other insurances, I'll let the other panelists speak about that, but home insurance policies, both the sums insured, the deductibles, the excesses, and the sums insured are usually linked for the majority of items to the consumer's price index, and they will adapt each year. Obviously, the last couple of years, they've actually sometimes gone down or haven't actually gone up that much, but historically, the sums insured go up slightly. So the third-party liability, which may have been 1 million or 2 million shekel, it may be listed in your policies, let's say 1,100,000 shekel, or with some very precise number. So everything does go up. And then what's recommended is every 3-4 years or so to have a new appraisal on the home insurance so that things are accurately reflecting the real new for old value in the current market, because that can change as well. But the default anyway is that from the base policy, it's listed by what the madad, the consumer price index, was listed at when you started the policy, and the sums insured and the deductibles will be linked to that madad, to that CPI.
Okay, I must add one thing to that answer, and that is as the amounts of insurance go up, the premium also goes up. So I think that people have to be aware of that. On the same score, David, I'd like to ask you how this works in motor car insurance, because in the policy, There is no amount of insurance specified. It is a question of the Yitzhak Levy price list, and today the complication of the new price list given by the ministry. Would you like to comment on all this?
Just to say that there's a national assessor who evaluates every single car in Israel if it's sold, firsthand, sold brand new, or sold secondhand, and so on. Officially, once we put in the license plate number of a car, we know what its value, what the general value is. There are all types of issues, I'll say, or various issues that do have an effect on the price or what a car is actually worth. I mean, they will take the national database, the Yitzhak Levy database, and say, okay, Kaya Picanto 2020 is worth so and so, but if it was a rental and if it was in an accident, and if so and so and so, you won't get that full amount of insurance, you'll get less. But officially, we all work on the same database.
And is that Yitzhak Levy or the government list? Sorry?
No. Yitzhak Levy is the national assessor in that event.
Fine. Okay. Adam, I'd like you to give a few words about the importance of linkage in life insurance, particularly, and also with regard to finance policies done through life insurance.
When you mean linkage, you mean the מדד המחירים לצרכן? That's what you're meaning?
Yes.
Okay, so the premium, every year the premium of life insurance can be changed. You need to see how you have a breakdown of the premium when you buy the life insurance. You have a breakdown of the premium until the insurance ends, and whatever you bought, let's say you bought a compensation of I don't know, 2 million shekels in case you die, so that is attached to the that is attached to the linkage, and also the premiums on the future are attached to that linkage in case of it goes up.
Okay. We've almost come to the end, but I've got one last question to ask, and I'm going to ask Mark to give the answer. It's in connection with jewelry. Jewelry insurance is very expensive. What do you suggest that new immigrants do with regard to that? Bearing in mind that they don't really have an income to start off with, they've got a lot of jewelry. How would you suggest that they cope with this problem?
Oh, that's a good one. Look, the normal standard household policy gives a certain percentage of the total contents automatically as jewelry or risk cover. Just for example, if it's 20% and they have 100,000 shekels worth of contents, they're going to have 20,000 shekels automatically given to them in cover. First of all, if the amount is a big amount of insurance, usually over 150 to 200,000 shekels, the insurance company is going to ask for a safe. Some of the insurance companies will allow you to take certain items off the assessment that were assessed. Sometimes what you can do is you can insure a certain item for an agreed value. That means, sometimes an assessor will come to you and he'll make a list of all the jewelry and it's assessed for big amounts of money. If you were to go out into the open market and try and sell it, you would never get the amount that it was insured for, that it was assessed for. So you might want to reduce the value on certain items or insure it for a lesser value that you know that you could actually replace it for. That would be my suggestion.
Do you suggest at any stage that they should put their jewelry in the bank?
Certainly, yes. If it's jewelry that's never been worn or being worn very seldom, yes. The only problem is that a lot of the banks have closed their safe rooms. You'll find that Bank Leumi,
they've only got dangerous rooms.
Yeah, you'll find that over the last couple of years, a lot of the banks have closed off their safe rooms, and only the major banks in the bigger cities actually have safe rooms today.
Okay. Good. I think, Teddy, I think that about
I
covers
think
it.
that there is one question about war, which I'll read in the meantime, but I do invite everybody to unmute themselves. And if they have a question that hasn't been answered or they would like to ask one of the panelists, please do so now. Anybody like to open their video and ask a question? So then I'll just read the last question. It's not very clear, but war is a standard exclusion. The compensation is paid by...
That's me, Teddy, answering Tammy's
you already
question.
answered the question. There you go. Somebody
Yes.
asked a question about war.
The word
And,
should be inclusion. Word should be inclusion, not exclusion. War is included, not excluded.
Okay.
War from house insurance?
No, life insurance. She asked life insurance. What you're
Oh, she asked the
since
claim.
1968, all after 68.
Oh, life. Sorry. Life insurance. Property insurance, I meant.
Life insurance is included.
So then again, I think that clears that up. And if anybody else would like to ask a question, I see Sue's waiting. Sue,
I don't have a question.
no question. Well, I hope, guys, that it was beneficial to all. I certainly took a lot away from it, and thank you all for joining. If anybody would like to get anybody's contact details, the panelists are welcome to share their contact details in the chat. And if you don't catch them, then you're happy to send a message to Aviva, and she will then connect you with any panelists that you would like. Thank you once again for joining us. Please check out the Telfed website for upcoming events. We have a few upcoming events in July, and something to look forward to in August is a virtual tour of China. So that's really something to look forward to. Good night to everybody, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Anybody
you.
like to add?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists, our moderator, Norman, and thank you to Teddy, and thank you everyone for joining us. Again, the panelists, please feel free to leave your information in the chat, and anyone who doesn't catch it, you're welcome to send me an email and we'll get the information to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
for everybody's
Thanks,
time
everybody.
and effort and expertise, and it's much appreciated. Good night to everybody.
Night,
Bye.